Sten, we're live.
And welcome again to another edition of In the Dugout. I am your host, Mike Stenhouse. Just breaking news, I guess for me personally. It's not too often you hit a grand slam. In baseball, I hit a few of those in college and in the minor leagues. But in my business, a grand slam is when you get published by a major reputable national organization. And for the second time, I've hit that grand slam. First one had nothing to do with my center or politics. It was an opinion piece that was in the Wall Street Journal about my father and other retired major leaguers who retired before 1980, who had multiple years of service but don't receive a pension. And I wrote about how wrong that was for baseball not to recognize and to provide for these men who helped build the game into the international mega business that it is. Well, today I had an opinion piece published by Breitbart News. And the opinion piece was a little bit of a spin-off on a statement our center put out last week on the appointment of Gina Raimondo as Commerce Secretary. And the theme of my opinion piece was what's going to be her appointment. It's going to be a downgrade for the American economy, especially compared to Wilbur Ross, who just held that seat, but an upgrade, we think, for the Rhode Island economy. Downgrade, upgrade. So we'll go through that a little bit later. But again, it's not every day you get published in a national publication like that. And thanks to Matt Boyle. I listen to Matt every Saturday on my Sirius XM when I can. And thanks to Paul Craney from the Mass Fiscal Alliance, who's been on the show as our guest. It was his idea that we try to work something out. One of the focuses of why it's a downgrade for America is because of Raimondo's support of a terrible anti-jobs, anti-business, anti-taxpayer tax like the TCI gas tax. I mean, how can you be Commerce Secretary when you're pushing for something so outrageous as that? All right, so we'll get into that later. All right, two other main topics today. At the bottom of the hour, we're going to have guests from the Bristol County Concerned Citizens, BCCC. They are involved in a fight to keep Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee off of their town council, a committee that would surely turn their whole town into a town of mush. So we're going to talk to a couple of gentlemen who are involved with the Bristol County Concerned Citizens Group and talk about their fight in the town of Bristol when it comes to that committee. We're going to start off in just a few minutes with a little more detail on this transportation and climate initiative gas tax that Governor Raimondo has signed us up for. There's still going to need to be enabling legislation passed in the General Assembly this year. You'll be hearing from us next week on what you can do to help stop that from happening, from help stopping to drive up gas prices and driving down the supply of gasoline, and all for no environmental benefit. We'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about a report that we published last week. And then just 2 days ago, we published a poll. Or was it yesterday? Yesterday, I lost track of published a poll on why such a gas tax is highly unpopular once people understand what's in the transportation and climate initiative. So a lot to talk about today. First, let me, tomorrow on our show, and I haven't even informed our producer of this yet, Larry, forgive me, Larry the Liberty Guy. We're going to talk about this circus of a lieutenant governor appointee farce that's going on, the Dan McKee, a guy I like, but by having people apply online, they're getting all mannerism of applications. I've had people contact me. We'll talk about some of those candidates tomorrow, but one of those candidates who is a former state rep, an old friend of mine, Joanne Giannini, former, I guess you would call her moderate to conservative Democrat. She's worked in state government a while. She was, I think, over 10 years as a state rep, 10, 20 years ago. And she has applied. She's going to be our guest, and we're going to talk about this whole process that McKee set up and how some people are using this process that McKee put in place. Again, this circus of a process, how some other people are dishonestly using it to their political advantage. All right. And of course, tomorrow and Thursdays, I haven't made contact with him yet today, but Thursdays is our day with Dr. Andrew Bostom on all things COVID-19. So be ready to tune in tomorrow. And again, I remind you, if you're watching live or after the fact, please subscribe to our channel. If you haven't done so, just hit that red subscribe button there, and you'll be notified whenever we go live on the air. Okay, one thing that just some quick Rhode Island quick hits today. Dan McKee, we just spoke about him, has put together a he's going to keep Governor Raimondo's COVID-19 task force in play, but he's also going to put together his own additional COVID-19 advisory group. And, these kind of, when you have this many people, it's really just, it's almost like patronage. You're handing out titles that people can use and take with them in their political career. Some of these people, we like Mayor Joseph Policina from Johnston. He's one of the co-chairs of this transition team. But look down here in this yellow. What? Robert Walsh, a National Education Association, teachers union. What is he doing on this list? What does he have to do with dispensing vaccines or advising the governor on the medical parts of COVID-19? Okay, I forgot. He's the teachers union rep, and that's right. They come first. Whatever they want comes first. Now, in other parts of the country, unions are not only insisting that they get vaccinated first, ahead of virtually everybody else before they go back to school, but that every student gets vaccinated as well. Now, we all know that vaccinating students is completely not supported by the data. Children don't spread this. There's hardly any documented cases of this with teachers. In fact, I heard a radio headline today, the CDC said that even teachers need to be vaccinated to go into K-12 classrooms because the danger just isn't there. Social distancing and mask wearing will be sufficient. But we know why Robert Walsh is on that committee, to make sure teachers get their way. And it's not the teachers. We love the teachers. It's these teachers union bosses who look for every opportunity to exert their power and their influence, pretending they're representing the teachers. Now, there probably are some squeamish teachers out there. And there's a lot of teachers who want to go back to work. But I'm sorry, you don't deserve to be ahead of the elderly and the infirm. And having Robert Walsh on that committee is yet another bad sign that soon-to-be Governor Dan McKee is not going to be able to stand up to the special interests in the state. We know that Dan McKee is not a leftist, socialist, communist. We know that. But that doesn't mean he's going to be able to stand up to and fight against the progressive left socialist Democrat agenda. And pretty much every sign we've seen so far indicates he's not showing much strength right now. So anyway, just a little note there. Just one quick thing on national politics. Barack Obama was quoted, and I want to share this clip with him. Everybody was joking that Joe Biden is going to be nothing but a there's going to be nothing but a third term for Barack Obama. Well, here's a kind of true but manufactured, photoshopped, if you would, talk from Obama. Listen to this.
What you know now, do you wish like you had a third term? And I used to say, you know what, if I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement in my sweats, looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony. I'd be fine with that. And what you know now.
I won't even comment. I mean, it's what many of us have thought was true, and maybe it is. Maybe it is. So anyway, that was just too juicy to forget. All right. We've got about 15 minutes or 20 before we bring on our guests and talk about the wokeness that is trying to invade Bristol, Rhode Island, Barrington, Rhode Island, and we've got guests from the Bristol County Concerned Citizens Group who will talk about how they're battling wokeness at the local town council level. So they'll join us in about 20 minutes. First, what I'd like to do is take you through a little more information on our on the report our center put out last week. We've never really got into this, so I'm gonna share my website, our various websites as we talk about this. So first, if you want all information, rifreedom.org/ you can just put TCI or no TCI tax. You don't even need those dashes. But if you can go there, there's all information from this year and last year. There's some good social media share squares and memes you can use. There's our Twitter feed on the issue, and there's information to our most recent research on this. There's a media release that we put out last week. There's our economic impact report, and there's a poll results that we published just yesterday. So again, rifreedom.org/TCI will get you there. Right? All right. The media release would summarize our findings on the Transportation and Climate Initiative, which is, again, a regional compact designed by environmentalists run out of the radical Georgetown University, where they want to control how much gasoline is sold and how much you pay, how much tax is levied on that gasoline in our state. The plan is for taxes to increase over years, over 5 years, let's say, and more, and for the supply of gasoline to go down over 5 years. Before I go back to the report, why do they want to do that? They want to make gasoline so expensive or so unavailable to you that you will drive less. Therefore, in theory, reducing carbon emissions and saving the world. They literally want to punish you for driving your cars, whether it's for work, or family, or for business, or your trucks, or your vehicles. This applies to regular gasoline and diesel gasoline. So truckers will be impacted by this. Farmers will be impacted by this. I don't think it applies to boat fuel. I'm sure that will be coming next, but regular gasoline and diesel. And again, that's their goal. They state it right out. They want to make it so expensive and so unavailable that you will be forced to drive less. Think about that. We're coming out of a recession. I mean, a pandemic recession. And they want to increase the costs of energy, fuel, and they want to make it less available. It's a cap and trade scheme for these unelected bureaucrats, okay? Unelected bureaucrats will decide how many tokens for gasoline distributors can be sold, and that's going to decrease over time, and at what price. And as they raise the price, gas taxes will have to go up. They say it, they admit it. So the report, so let me go back and share our screen here. And we may not get into the guts of the report, but again, the report says, we're going to talk about the economic harm, but you know how much, well, first let me say one thing. The TCI group itself admits that even if there's no policy change, even if TCI is not implemented, that carbon emissions in our region are going to decline by 19 to 20% anyway, just because we're increasing technology, we're using more fuel efficient cars. We're using more, when you look at fracking and natural gas instead of pure oil. We're doing a lot of things. America leads the world in reducing carbon emissions. I'm pretty sure you know that already. And we're doing it without oppressive mandates, without a Paris Climate Accord. We're just doing it because we have conscientious businesses and conscientious Americans, and we're developing new and innovative technology that produce less and less carbon emissions, just letting the free market do its thing. But the radical environmentalists want to force you, right? They want to force you by punishing you when you drive. So even their own material says that emissions are going to decrease by another 19 to 20%, even if we don't do anything. This TCI gas tax will only increase the reduction in emissions by another 5 to 6%. But for massive economic cost. And again, we have to look at these things in a cost versus benefit analysis. What's the cost? What's the benefit? Is it worth it? You can't just look at the potential benefits. So given all that, do you know that the negatives are 100 times greater? Where do I say? Yeah, 100 times more severe than the benefits. And that we will reduce world global carbon gas emissions. Now get this, this is 0.00016%. That's 1/625th of 1%. That's how much this TCI scheme will reduce carbon gas emissions. And yet, we just had a Twitter fight today, with somebody who's saying, oh, well, TCI is going to allow us to breathe cleaner air in Rhode Island. No, it's not. This is not about, we just showed you it. Even John Kerry said yesterday, you see that quote? John Kerry said, even if the whole United States went to zero emissions, it wouldn't change anything because of what's happening in China and India and the rest of the world. Well, imagine what's going to happen in Rhode Island. You think, how arrogant is it? How arrogant is it for Rhode Island lawmakers to think that anything we can do in this state will have any meaningful impact on world global carbon emissions? It's arrogant. It's a pure fantasy. So let's go back and look at the negatives here. So we hired a group that has a tax modeling program. And if we raise the gasoline tax by just 23 cents, okay, 23 cents. Now, this is projected to go maybe into the 30s or 40s. It might start at 8, 9, 10 cents in year one, and then it'll go up 5 or 10 cents every year. So we took an average at 23 cents, but it's likely to go much, much higher. So even at 23 cents, look at this. Within 5 years, it's going to cost a family $1,205. Now, that's just not extra gas costs. But don't forget, when you charge truckers and companies, they have to raise their price of the goods as well too. So that will get passed on to the consumer. So by paying more for gas and by paying more for goods, they estimate $1,205 a year for the average family. Can you afford an extra $1,205 a year? Now think of all the other businesses. That means that's $1,205 less you have to spend somewhere else. Restaurants, dry cleaner, whatever the case may be, movie theaters, miniature golf. We could lose close to 2,000 jobs in the state because it's going to harm business that much. When businesses have less profit, they hire fewer people. Investment in the state will be reduced by over $750 million, and state annual gross domestic product will also be reduced by almost $500 million. Again, all for this much. Folks, that's not a good cost versus benefit value proposition. It just isn't. You know it. I know it. We need to let lawmakers know about it. We also published a poll, and I'll just again give you the top line figures on the poll yesterday. We hired a group who has experience polling on this question. And here is, let's see if it comes up. Let me share this with you. Here is here's the headline: Rhode Islanders say no to the high cost of the TCI gas tax. So what basically happens here is there's a baseline of support when you just say, hey, what do you think of the idea of raising gas taxes in order to save carbon emissions? And 42% of Rhode Island said, yeah, that sounds good. But once they started learning about the jobs lost, the cost to their family, the loss of investment, the fact that there's no environmental benefit virtually at all, the support plummets from 42% to 29%. That's a big drop, folks. So that means less than 3 in 10 Rhode Islanders support the whole scheme when you consider the benefits and the negatives and the costs. Of course, their side only tells you the benefits, and they even fib to you about that. Among Democrats, even among Democrats, a majority who support it fall to a minority who support it. The ever valuable independents, opposition rises 10% once they learn of the high costs, and support falls about 8%, 8.5%. And among young voters, again, look at this, among young voters, those you might think might be all more open to a climate change reform message, no, their support drops from over 50% to just a third once they learn of the severe economic consequences. And most I can't quite say most, but almost half of Rhode Islanders feel that TCI will disproportionately affect commuters and low-income families. And that's a key component of this scheme, is it will impact low-income families. Now, there is, in all fairness, there is in the bill a mechanism to provide a rebate for these high taxes to certain lower income families. Can you imagine our state trying to do that fairly, trying to do that effectively? Think of the UHIP disaster. I mean, it would be a disaster. Why the hell would we collect taxes just to rebate them? It just doesn't make sense. The environmentalists here are being played. All right, listen, the environmentalists are being played with all these carbon emission reduction schemes. It's not about the environment. It's a pure money grab. The state wants the money to spend on, yeah, it might be green projects, but the green projects are the special interest groups, right, who demand political fealty, who demand that the leaders spend money on their projects, or else they might lose their support at the polls in the voting box. This is nothing but a money grab to satisfy more special interest groups. If you're an environmentalist out there, we're all concerned about the environment. These schemes don't work. You're being played. You're being played. All right, a couple more items on this before we get into, and of course, ultimately, taxes like this, greenhouse carbon reductions schemes are going to just drive more families and businesses and investors out of this state. We very well may know within the next week or so whether or not Rhode Island's going to lose a congressional seat because we haven't kept pace with national population growth. Our state is staying level while most other states, all but a handful, are growing. And we may lose a congressional seat because of that. I mean, what more could there be? Why would we give people another reason to leave this state? So when groups like ours speak out, the left doesn't like it. They try to cancel you. So here's a piece in Go Local Prov, penned by Robert Whitcomb. You may remember him as the former editorial page manager of the Providence Journal editorial page, before Ed Acorn came in, maybe a good 7 or 8 years ago. So he just goes right after us, that we're against all cutbacks on fossil fuels, and that we're the old mindless pablum, that we're connected to such operations as Koch Industries, and that we're really about freedom and prosperity for billionaires and all the special interest groups that finance us. It's all baloney. He has no idea what it's talking about. We are supported by Rhode Island donors who believe in free markets, who believe in the fight for freedom, and who believe in less government is better government. That's who finances us. We set our own agenda, and then we go out and secure the support of people who want to support that agenda. We don't carry the water for anybody else. But the left's trying to cancel us by trying to make us seem like we're some evil Koch brothers. I mean, not that, why are they more evil than George Soros anyway? But anyway, and then here's a little back and forth, as I mentioned earlier to you earlier, with this climate action group. Oh, come on, Mike, how can you be so mean? How can you be against having clean air to breathe and better and cheaper public transit? Public transit? How many of us want to get crammed in on a trolley or a bus with potentially infected people? Public transit? Are you kidding me? And like I mentioned to you earlier, environmentalists like these people here are being played. This is all about money, folks. All right, last item before we get to our guests is what I started off with, the little, I'm going to call it a grand slam, the editorial grand slam I hit today. So here is my article that was published today on Breitbart News. Look at that right there. That's me. Wow, that's kind of cool. I mean, I've written a lot of op-eds. I've had some regional, I don't know, notoriety as a baseball player, back in those days, and I've had tons of articles printed in the Providence Journal and in all the local papers. But still, to see your name on a national news outlet like this is kind of interesting and fulfilling. It's not often somebody from Rhode Island, can make this kind of news. So I'm happy. So again, the theme here is what will be a downgrade for the U.S. economy in Gina Raimondo will be an upgrade, we hope, for Rhode Island, although my hope is fading with Dan McKee. Again, I compare later in the article Raimondo's background to Wilbur Ross's background, who was just, he was a legend on Wall Street. Wilbur Ross, our most recent Commerce Secretary in the Trump administration. Gina Biden just has a little private sector experience with a hedge fund, and the rest of her career has been in politics, basically. And that is a major downgrade, especially as we mentioned here. What we just talked about. A governor that promotes higher taxes, gas tax in this case, the TCI gas tax, while our state is trying to recover, and while families and businesses are trying to recover from this horrible pandemic. How can you be Commerce Secretary when you push such anti-business, anti-jobs legislation when businesses are struggling just to keep the lights on and to engage in commerce? And that was really the gist of this article today that I wrote in Breitbart. Now, again, we're hoping that Dan McKee, and I don't give you some news right now. You want some news? I'm going to give you some news right now. Next week, we're going to make a call, and we're going to show you how you can support it. We're going to call on Governor Dan McKee. We assume by next week he'll be sworn in as governor to withdraw Rhode Island from this horrible transportation and climate initiative that will produce massive economic hardship for virtually zero environmental benefit. So stay tuned for that, and we will look forward to telling you more about that next week. Oh, the only other thing I'll just spend 2 minutes on, because we did put 1 minute on, and then I promise you we'll bring us our guests in. There was a related bill being heard in the Senate today. It's a bill that would amend the greenhouse gas reduction schedule. It would accelerate the schedule for Rhode Island to meet a lower carbon emission standard. Again, it's the same as the TCI tax. It's the same idea. Punish people for making and limit people's choices on what energy choices they want to make. I call it pure fantasy. And as I just described, and I'll read right here, it's pure fantasy. There's anything our little state can do to impact the greater world climate. And when you weigh that against the punishing economic realities, fantasy versus reality, fantasy benefits versus real negative costs, punishing economic realities that would be forced on our state. I mentioned in my testimony that I submitted this afternoon that even John Kerry has said that there's even anything the United States could do isn't going to change anything, never mind what Rhode Island could do. So this is what we call an incredibly poor cost versus benefit value proposition. We at least try to look at the cost versus benefits. The other side only tries to overplay the benefits without looking at the costs. We're not going to let them get away with that. So in the end, I say, given the suffering of the pandemic, now is not the time to put in place policies aimed to punish Rhode Island families and businesses for making budget-wise, less expensive energy consumption choices. I ask you not to give families and businesses yet another reason not to choose Rhode Island as their destination of choice to live in, work in, and invest. So that's a testimony I put into the Senate Committee on Environment and Agriculture today. All right, so that's enough on TCI today. I hope you realize what really a bad deal this is for Rhode Island. It's nothing but feel-good legislation that lawmakers on the left think they have to do to be part of the game. They've got to understand the cost versus the benefit. Okay, let us bring in, if Larry the Liberty guy will bring up, one more little teeny thing, I'm sorry. We talked about Rhode Islanders leaving the state. This is a little joke. Harold Cuomo was driving people out of his state. So he was named, this is a joke, he was named Florida's Realtor of the Year. Let's not pass these wacky climate bills and have Rhode Island be the runner-up to Florida's Realtor of the Year and having more and more of our people flee to Florida. Okay, Larry the Liberty guy, why don't you tell me who our guests are today?
We have Peter and Dave from the BCC. So I'm going to unmute them now and ask them to start their video. So they're coming up. Okay, so we got Peter Hewitt and David Scarpino from the Bristol County Concerned Citizens Group. Gentlemen, can you hear me? And can you start your video?
I can hear you, Mike. This is Pete.
Hi, Pete. How you doing? Can you start your video? Do you have video, Pete, or did you call in?
I do, but I'm not sure how to start it.
All right.
We're working on it here, fellas. You'll get a request in just a second. Start the conversation.
Down below on your screen, there should be a little start video button, lower left of this Zoom screen. David, same with you, if you can start your video. But anyway, David, welcome to the dugout.
Thank you for having us, Mike. We do appreciate it.
All right. So before we get into the issue at hand, just describe, whoever wants, Peter, why don't you describe what your group is named and what your mission is?
Yeah, we're called the Bristol County Concerned Citizens. It was a group that was started back in January of 2020. And I'm going to start my video, I think. There we go.
We got you,
Handsome.
Peter. All right, you got a hat for me too, I see. What do you got for in the dugout?
Go Navy.
Go Navy. Yeah, thanks for your service. Go ahead.
So we started about a year ago. We were concerned that with this progressive left involved taking over the Democratic Town Committee, we were losing the bubble on what we consider to be traditional Bristol County, Bristol family values and traditional values. So we wanted to start a group for the purposes of emphasizing, promoting, preserving, and protecting what we would consider to be traditional American values.
Well, that's a great goal. Now, David, let me ask you, being a little cynical, the East Bay seems to have gone totally left. Is there any hope that we can restore those values in the East Bay?
So let me ask you a question, Mike. Did my video kick?
No, we're still not
Or
seeing
not?
you. Still not seeing you, but go ahead and talk while you're working on it.
So there is hope. And the reason there's hope is because we've got a group of citizens in this town who believe that traditional values and the views of the non-progressives still have a place in our society. And we have to keep pushing to advocate for those values.
And Peter, I think you would agree that it is the progressive left that have become the darlings of the media. They've become the woke and the politically correct thing to do. I mean, how do we make traditional? Oh, there you are, David. How do we make traditional? And that doesn't mean discriminatory against anybody, but how do we make those traditional American values cool again?
Well, the only way you can do it is by promoting them.
Okay.
We have right now about 270 Bristol residents and non-Bristol residents who are part of the BCCC group. We're certainly hopeful to expand. We'd love to get that membership up to about 1,000, where we might have some clout. We often write letters to the editor.
Great.
Certainly have taken a position with respect to this diverse equity and inclusion committee that the progressive left have sought to have the town council give its imprimatur to.
All right, let's have David. I'm going to go back and forth to you two. David, why don't you describe what they tried to do with this committee in the Bristol Town Council?
So before I do that, Mike, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump. It was, how do we get people to believe and make them cool again?
Yeah.
Telling people that equality of opportunity is more important than equity of outcome. You tell them that hard work and deferring rewards is the right way to go. You tell them that they can be successful rather than they can never be successful unless the government.
Okay. Got it. All right. So what were they trying to do in your town?
Basically, in our town, what they wanted to do, they asked the town council to make them an arm of the government. They wanted to be a self-appointed committee at first.
Who's they?
This is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Group. It's an
DEIC.
DEIC. They're an informal group in town of a bunch of like-minded progressive people. And their belief was that there's so much discrimination, systematic racism that exists in town.
Victimizations.
They never show any evidence of it at all. They believe that a national narrative can be brought down to a local level and that they're the solution to a problem that doesn't exist.
So Peter, so leaders of this group, who are they? Who are their names? Do you know their names?
Well, yeah, I do. There's a few of them. You can, off the top of my head, I don't want to name because I might leave somebody out,
Okay, so these people came and they specifically wanted to create a Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council as part of the town council, correct?
Well, that was our concern. I don't know if the group that was promoting this committee, would want to own up or acknowledge that they were going to be sanctioned an official board commission committee of the town. But that's the only way we could see them being effective. And that is they wanted to bring to the town council's attention incidents, issues involving less diversity than the town is entitled to, less equality, and less inclusiveness. And our concern was that we thought Bristol was pretty diverse in and of itself. We certainly consider the residents of Bristol to be fair-minded, and we certainly consider Bristol to be inclusive. We don't know of anybody who has ever been excluded from becoming a member of the Bristol Society. So we kind of consider this to be more of a solution seeking problem.
All right. So, so David, how did your group organize to try to fight back?
So we tried to make sure that we were very clear to the town council that the objectives of the group were flawed, that the premise of wanting to form the committee was flawed, and that if they wanted to
That there's this rampant inequality.
There's rampant inequality, and by them reviewing, say, all the documents of the town council and of the town, that they would find areas where marginalized people were discriminated against and propose solutions. So what we suggested was, we're not opposed to you forming a group, but do it on your own. Don't make it an arm of the government. And there are plenty of organizations in the town whose goal and purpose and mission it is to help people who struggle. Go help them. They already exist.
Mike, let me add something on that, because I think it's important to point out that the vote of the town council was 3-2 against establishing this committee as an arm of the government. And the rationale by the majority was more to the point that Dave just raised. There are so many civic, social, religious, charitable organizations formed by residents in the town of Bristol that the suggestion was, if these people who want to form the DEI committee are so committed to diversity, equality, inclusiveness, then they should go about forming their own group or lending their efforts and their energies to these already established groups for the purposes of fostering their objectives.
All right. So as we're showing on the screen right now, you ended up winning the vote. When was it? Last week or so, or was it just last week?
January 20th.
January 20th. So there was a vote, and apparently Miss Aaron Lay was one of 2 counselors who voted in favor of it.
Yes.
There were, let's see, there were Tim Sweeney voted in favor of it, right?
Yes.
But these 3, Nate Caloro, Tony Texera, and Mary Perella, voted against. Are they, is it party lines you have in Bristol? Are those 2 Democrats and those 3 Republicans? How would you?
No, actually, we have a very diverse town council. We have Mary Perella, who's a Republican. Tony's an independent. Nathan is a Democrat. And both Tim and Aaron Lay are both Democrats.
So you had 1 Democrat who voted against the wokeness.
Correct.
Well, kudos to Nate Caloro. Is he generally a reasonable guy?
Pardon me?
Is Nate generally a reasonable, non-progressive Democrat?
Yes.
He is. Okay. So he's
a point out also that in our membership of the 270, we have quite a few Democrats. And in fact, we have at least one who is a former chair of the Democratic Town Committee. And I don't want to speak for them, but I think it's fair to say that these Democrats, who I would venture to say are more traditional, liberal, moderate Democrats, were very upset by the way the progressive element has taken over the town committee and the chairmanship. And
David, going to the vote, this part of the article said that one of the persuasive letters was by this attorney, Diane Messer-McGee, and basically said that the establishment of such a council would be inconsistent, kind of legally with the charter of the town. Can you explain that a little bit and talk about how important that particular legal analysis was?
Yeah, we believe that letter was very beneficial to our cause. Again, I didn't write it, so I'm going to say it in my words. Look, we have duly elected officials in our town, the town council, to make a decision-making body, and that's what they want it to be, from people who are non-elected, just isn't democratic. And, Mike, the other piece that's important to know, the progressive wing of this town, or probably any town, are a very small minority of the residents. They don't represent the views of the many. And when issues like this just pop up on the end of January town council, people don't know about it. We don't know the town's views. We know the views of the small.
So that's a great point. I'd like to kind of segue into broader discussion, if you don't mind, because this can be a great lesson to other citizens and other towns. We know that take Roadmap Rhode Island. Some of you remember that. This was a national effort to infringe on property rights under the guise of affordable housing. And they attacked nationally. There was a plan to implement. They knew they weren't going to be able to push this down from the top down very, very easily. So they started a bottom-up strategy where they went into town councils, where they only have to convince 3 people, right, on a council, regardless of what public opinion is in the area. Because like you said, public opinion is not really aware of what's going on in the council, and they can get their agenda passed from a bottom-up strategy by going town to town. Now, we know that Barrington is in a fight on this as well, which is also within your purview, right? You're Bristol County. So Barrington's part of your group's purview, correct?
Correct.
What's the status, Peter, of that DEIC council in Barrington right now?
I frankly don't know if there has been a movement yet for the DEIC committee with the town council, but you know, the other night, the town council, I think, on Tuesday, voted unanimously to hoist
the flag,
BLM flag.
To keep the BLM flag up, right? So that's not a good sign over there.
So Mike, I do have, and Pete, I do have an update. I believe tonight Barrington is going to have a Zoom call where they've hired a consultant. Think about this. They've hired a consultant, 5 progressives, to come in and talk to them about forming a DEIC committee.
You know who the consultant is?
What do you think the recommendation's gonna be? Let's just go here.
Any idea who that consultant is?
No, I do not know. I was gonna.
Was there a consultant to Bristol and you're in the Bristol?
No, there wasn't.
There was no.
Nope, there was no. All right, are you aware that any town or city has established such a DEIC committee, or are Barrington and Bristol the first 2 in the state?
I believe Bristol was the first effort that got to a town council vote. I'm not positive of that because the proponents of this committee did mention, and I couldn't verify it, that they had gone out and consulted with various committees established in other jurisdictions. I think primarily Massachusetts. Sharon, Mass, I think, was one town that was named that had a DEIC committee. So the proponents, in an effort to be fair, did consult with other town committees to help them promote their own committee with Bristol.
So Mike, if I could just move off for a second.
Yeah.
But bring up a point that kind of intersects with Barrington. So the other night, as Pete said, Barrington voted to continue to have a policy about flying banners or flags on their flagpole. And they also approved that the BLM flag would fly for another month. So here's the needle they're threading. It's not the organization BLM they support. It's the value of the movement. So now we're going to have, and this is the same thing if DEI gets in, we're going to have people telling us what our values are, what our free speech, what we're allowed to say. We're going to give up a lot of rights.
Well, this is really, if you think about it, as you talked about that, David, this is really kind of a form of cancel culture, right? If you don't think the way we think, you're out. Our thing is in.
Right. So for instance, if I want to fly a flag in Barrington that talks about Italian Heritage Day, because I happen to be Italian, they're going to tell me.
No, that's not Italian.
There we go. They're going to tell me if that represents their values. I'm sorry, but that's not up to 5 people to decide what the town values are. That's
true. That's true. And this is the scheme of the left is, again, they only have to convince 3 people because most town councils only have 5, right? And they can then say, look, we talked to the duly elected representative, so therefore it must represent the people. All right. So congratulations.
Barrington has five rather progressive town council members.
Well, by their vote on the flag issue, it looks that way. Now, so congratulations. You guys beat this. One of the arguments was that, like you said earlier, Peter, this is something you can form off to the side, outside of the government, and advise and make whatever hay of you want in the media or however you want to with it. But what is the lesson here? I mean, at least there was a organized group, Bristol County Concerned Citizens, to help organize opposition to this. What is the lesson here to concerned citizens in other counties and other cities and towns across the state? First, Peter, then Dave.
I think the lesson is that the residents of any town have to be informed, and they have to be organized or try to organize, because I'll tell you, the progressive element is very well organized. They're very aggressive, they're determined, and they're well financed. It's a problem. Because I think an awful lot of people, you probably don't even read the paper, so they don't know what's going on. And when the DEI committees come through with their agenda, their petition, it sounds very nice. It's very nice sounding, good intentions.
It always is.
But
They're the masters of feel good. Yeah.
Well, I read in today's Wall Street Journal, Jason Riley had a piece, and I love the quote that he gave. He attributed to Milton Friedman. He said, "The society that puts equality before freedom will end up with neither, while the society that puts freedom before equality will end up with a great measure of both."
You see that sign? Freedom and prosperity. Where there's freedom, there's prosperity. We agree. All right, David, I think Peter said the key thing, and then you talk about the lesson, but organize. We know the left is organized. It's very rare that citizens on the right get organized. What do you say is the lesson to other citizens in other cities and towns?
So I'm going to attack it, and I love what Pete said, but I'm going to attack it from two other points of view.
Go ahead.
Number, you make an argument against these type of initiatives, make sure you're fact-based. If you once you get the facts out, they're helpless because they can't defend their position. Number two, when election time comes, elections have consequences. You've got to have balance in the folks that you elect to a town council. If there are 5, you need a little bit of each so that you could have an intelligent, balanced conversation that brings all voices to the table.
Now, we're going to have, let me ask you to specifically think about how you would advise. We're going to have a guest on next week from Westerly. And I haven't studied it yet, but apparently Westerly School Board is trying to pass the 1619 project curriculum into their American history or social studies curriculum. And we're going to have a gentleman on who's, I'm not aware of any organized group in Westerly, but your thoughts that I can send to him next week on what he can do. He seems like he's a one-man band. We'll find out more right now. Can one man make a difference?
You know, here in Bristol, we have a DEI curriculum change where the 3 members of the 9-member school committee got together with 60 people last summer, came up with this DEI curriculum change, whereby in English, the classic novel, A Catcher in the Rye, is going to be taught for the purposes of having the kids focus in on what privilege means. So it's already in our school system to that degree. What's happening in Westerly, I don't know, but it involves, I think, knowing what your school committee is about, knowing what's on their agenda, knowing what the curriculum in the school calls for. You have to do an awful lot of research work, I believe, to find out where you stand. And then you need to organize the townsfolk to alert them as to what's going on, and hopefully nip it in the bud before it becomes part of the curriculum.
Yeah, so we're gonna try to give them a little exposure on it to help in that regard. David, go ahead. Final comment to you.
So I was going to say, you know, Mike, we have to bring balance into our conversation. We have to bring diversity of opinion to our students.
No, you're canceled. No, you're canceled.
So I'll give you an example. So the Bristol Warren School District uses Brown's Choices program as part of the curriculum for its high school students. When you go into Brown's Choices programs, they have radical left-wing people who have all these 1619 thoughts and that the world is horribly systemically racist. If the kids only hear that, what are they going to believe?
Of course. And I'm not, well, I'll tell you what, gentlemen, I got a final comment on this, but I'll do this off here. Peter Hewitt and David Scarpino from Bristol County Concerned Citizens, congratulations on your victory. I hope it's a permanent one. And I hope we have you back on next time there's an issue, because I believe what you guys are doing should be a model for what should have. We know there's a what is it? A Portsmouth Concerned Citizens group down there. But I think you guys are a model for what needs to happen in cities and towns across the state. And I thank you for your
Hey,
vigilance and your patriotism. Thank you,
Mike,
Peter.
could I say
Thank you.
one
Dave.
thing?
Go ahead,
Mike,
Peter.
could I say one thing?
Sure.
It's been a privilege being on your show, and I didn't realize we're going to be on with a person with a national following. Breitbart. Nice
You
piece.
think
Well
I
done.
can get syndicated now?
I hope so.
David, thank you for that, David.
I know you said last comment, but I want to say one other thing. People have to do this without fear. So
Yep.
many people are afraid to do what Peter and I and the other folks in the group are doing for fear of personal attacks, canceled by their families. You cannot be afraid. You cannot be.
Thank you, gentlemen. Congratulations. Let's have you back on soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. So, folks, these are like David just alluded to. These are some brave gentlemen right here. They stood up. They knew the media, the status quo, the woke, hypnotized woke would be against them and potentially attack them on social media or around town. Do I even show you this? I mean, one of the problems with these Zooms, and I got to talk to Larry how people are getting on here without the password. But anyway, a lot of people are signing in and just putting, I don't even know what words to use, just absolutely not obnoxious, disgusting, profanity in our chat. They log in for a few minutes. I know Larry the Liberty guy is doing a great job keeping them off mic and off air, but they're on long enough to put some. I mean, I can't even show you. It's so profane. This is the left we're dealing with. They absolutely are deranged. They absolutely don't want to hear from guys like Peter or David or me or you. And somehow they win. How the hell does that happen? How does that happen? And somehow the media adores them. How does that happen? They can destroy things. They can have riots. They can burn down police precincts, burn up cars, destroy private property, even murder and maim people. And they're given a pass. And if our team just breaks through a picket line and does none of those other things, we're the insurrectionists. We're the ones that need to be canceled. We're the ones, the new one, that need to be reprogrammed or deprogrammed from our racist, insurrectionist viewpoints. And yet I see some of this commentary. I see what they say and do on the media and they say and do on the streets. And they want to cast us as the bad guy. It's really an upside down world we're living in, folks. And again, just if I can just toot my own horn one final time, because again, it's not every day I'll get to say this to you, but here is the article that I wrote today, because it's another upside down thing. This is my op-ed that was published just a few hours ago in Breitbart at Breitbart.com. It's upside down when a governor like Gina Raimondo, who has done so much with the worst business climate in this country, in our state, the worst, who failed both in managing the pandemic and our economy. We're among the worst, both in terms of cases and deaths on the medical side, and among the worst when it comes to job losses and GDP loss on the economic side. And it's somebody, as we showed here, as I mentioned in my article, who wants to impose a tax on businesses. Certainly in Rhode Island, she's already signed us up for that, and she's indicated that she wouldn't rule out a tax hike nationally to fund the green special interest agenda. It's upside down. that somebody like that could be nominated for United States Secretary of Commerce. It's really what we talked about a few weeks ago. It's really Neverland. The left lives in this fantasy world and they get away with it. And they win. They win at the local level. They win at the state level. They've won at the national level. And they win in the media. And it's just unbelievable to anybody who's a sane thinking person like you or me. I mean, we literally are living in two different worlds. And as I ask in my column, if you see my column, you go to get a Rhode Island Echo, get the February column, and I talk about the left's Neverland, but then I end up by saying, or is it us who are living in the fake world? Or maybe are they the ones who are in the right, and we're the ones who are seeing it all backwards and upside down? I don't think so, but how can two groups of people, it's amazing that how everything is upside down and how everything we think is true, they think is false, and vice versa. And that the media, who is supposed to be the guardians of veritas, are the ones who promote the lies and are the ones who promote that we're the ones lying. It's really an incredible world we live in. I thank you for joining me here on In the Dugout. Again, tomorrow we will have one of the candidates, the self-applied for candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Joanne Giannini, on with us, and then we will have, I believe, Dr. Andrew Boston in the bottom of the hour. So for In the Dugout, thanks for staying with us, and we will see you next game.